Oh, there we go. Audio is.
I just sent something about stats, sir. I guess I can share with you real quick here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we didn't do a great job keeping the stats, but we had an intro book such that we could do the first scheduled, first intro, second scheduled, second intro, and road. And we have it printed out so we can keep it daily going forward. But here's the question. So like when my wife first kind of totaled them up for me, I said, well, that's not possible because it was like 25 first scheduled, 23 first intros, and then there were 31 second scheduled. But then like some of those are kind of left over from the month before that came back. Is that normal and okay to reflect it that way?
It is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's why on any numbers, right? A week is less representative than a month is, and a month is less representative than a quarter is, and a quarter is less representative than 6 months, et cetera. So a longer period of time you have, the more it really is going to reflect underlying what's going on. And there's always going to be carryover, from May to June or whatnot, right? So, in May I had last 3 days I had 10 second intro or 10 first intros that carry over to second intros in June. And sometimes I had 10 second intros and they converted to thirds, and then the actual enrollment or the agreement didn't get executed, and then it carries over and it looks kind of weird. So that's fine. You also want to, in looking at it, know underlying what's going on, so you can figure out. It was always the topic of our meetings on Monday and Wednesday. It would go up on the big board, and I was always having the conversation with the staff. Okay, what is this? Oh, this is carryover. Great. Who are they? Right. So I would call them on it. Well, great. Who is that? Well, it's this family, this family, this family. Well, I don't know. Okay, so you can't add, is what you're really trying to say, right? So that's not unusual.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get going off in a little different direction here, or maybe it's the same direction. Maybe I confused myself. I'm going to hit, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to hit a what would be a 3-day NLP or 3-day cognitive behavioral therapy seminar in about 30 minutes. And so therefore I'm going to rush through a bunch of stuff and whine and rant a lot in the process, but bear with me here. Let's see, share screen. Let's see if I get the right one shared. Let's start with this, which is a pretty good graphic to begin with. Can everybody see that okay? Did that screen share fine? It says NLP communication model. Great. So let's start with this. This is, kind of NLP. If you're not familiar with it, it stands for neuro-linguistic programming, and it's arguably in the range of pop psychology. But it has some useful things to think about. The underlying premise of NLP by Bandler and Grinder was, if anybody can get a result, then if you watch, model, and replicate what they do, you can get the same result, right? And they really started with one world famous hypnotherapist, Milton Erickson, and a world famous family therapist by the name of Virginia Satir, I believe is the correct pronunciation. And they looked at what she did in therapy, and they looked at what Erickson did in hypnotherapy. And they modeled that behavior and then taught that model. And their early books were, horribly written in arcane titles like The Structure of Magic and one thing or another. But what they really were about is modeling people who got really good results with working with other human beings, both from a hypnotherapy standpoint and from a family therapy standpoint. The main conclusions on the family therapy side that they talk about a lot is matching, mirroring, modeling. So it's all of the sales techniques, if you will, or communications techniques of really creating empathy and creating a relationship with another person by physically and tonality and everything else becoming more like they are. It's why in practice, very few people put their customer service reps in, say, New Jersey. They put the customer service reps, in Tulsa or Oklahoma City or something like that. And it's why it fails dramatically to put the customer service reps in India, for instance, is there's a tonality on the phone, there's a personableness and so forth. But mostly what Satir said is, in order to build rapport, what you do is you match and mirror and model. So if somebody is tapping a pencil at a certain pace, you kind of create the same movement, model your tonality, model the pace of your voice and so forth with them, model the body posture. And so it was about modeling and building rapport and having them feel comfortable on a subconscious level and leading. And the hypnotherapy, a lot of the application is in embedded phrases in the way you talk to people, which really kind of embeds, hypnotic suggestions and so forth. And it's not about, putting them into a hypnotic state so much as creating a conversational pattern that places the suggestions in their mind. But I wanted to go to this particular graphic because, and there's another one I didn't pull up, the 5-finger pointer pattern, but this is particularly useful for us. Right now, we have roughly, and I don't know exactly what the skew is, those who are having the worst results are least likely to share their numbers with us. But, probably 2/3 of our schools are doing just fine, if not thriving in the current environment. And somewhere between 10% and 25% are having a complete emotional meltdown and are not doing particularly well. And the difference is a fine combination, not to overgeneralize, but it's mostly people who make bad decisions and think about the world in counterproductive ways. And then number 2 is don't take enough action and do enough stuff. Our biggest problem always, and it's usually in the marketing realm, and it continues to be in the marketing realm in this, is people who underestimate how much stuff they have to do to get enough students in the door. And they underestimate how difficult it is. They underestimate how expensive it is. They underestimate how many either man hours or dollars spent it's going to take, right? So, but let's go to this NLP model. The basic thing that it's indicating, to massively oversimplify, is that if there's an external event, right? So right now we're in the corona shutdown, reopening, social distancing, all this craziness going on. And you overlay that with riots and every other crazy crap, right? But an external event happens. What it's saying is the way anybody interprets that event first goes through their filters that is based upon, I'm not going to get into explaining it, but meta programs, the way they view the world generally, their underlying values, their general belief about the world, decisions that they have made in the past, memories of what's happened in the past. So before anything that might be objectively factual really enters their level of thinking, it goes through all of these subjective filters and then gets interpreted from their own subjective worldview, rather than really having the objective external event end up in their mind to be evaluated in an objective and an independent way. Is that fair enough so far? And then once it's in there, what they're going to do next is greatly dependent upon, for want of a better way of saying it, what their mood is at the time. It's going to be dependent by their emotional state of being, right? If somebody is already stressed out, freaked out, the end of the world is coming, any of these things, once they make it through their existing filters, generalizations, and one thing or another, is going to be acted on based upon that frightened and emotional state, right? And to use this as an current example, is when you're frightened and when you're highly stressed out, you revert to fight or flight, right? And so it doesn't, in many cases, it doesn't lead to taking action. it leads to, flight, meaning just ignore it, assume that, nothing good can happen, curl up in a fetal position on your floor and wait for things to pass. I mean, there's all kinds of bad ways to react to stuff like this, right? But so if your mental state, what this is saying, your emotional state is a fine combination of what your internal representations are of what's going on. And then it's the way you're using your body and behaving, right? So a way that I say this simply, not necessarily using their format, but the way I say this simply is, if you're in the mode of taking massive action, you're mentally in the mode of making things happen and thinking things are happening. And, let's take it as a marketing thing. If you got 20 or 30 different things going on, something's going to work, for God's sake. But just the action of placing lawn signs, placing rack cards, talking to the guy at the pizza shop to get flyers on the box, talking to the ad reps, getting the Facebook advertising out. Just the action of doing all that stuff creates a more positive mindset of results than sitting there worrying about, wondering about, thinking about what should go on. Does that make sense? So let me shift to a different model, but it is going to have very similar conclusions here. Here is my new, go ahead and mute yourself if you're going to take calls. But here's my a in-depth study I did many years ago that came back to the forefront as I started reading and I just sent this stuff out to you, so you don't need to take pictures of it. It's also on the Facebook group, but you're welcome to. This is basics of cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, it approaches this from a slightly different way, but it leads you to the same conclusion. So you'll see here: filtering, catastrophizing, polarized thinking, heaven's reward fallacy, control, always being right, and so forth. But let's just talk about two or three of them. Number one that I see is down here at the bottom: overgeneralization. This happens every damn meeting we do, okay? One student says something, and therefore the one thing they said, which may even be misinterpreted, may even not be what they meant to begin with, suddenly becomes the way that it gets overgeneralized to be a rule on how we should deal with people, right? You combine that one with, well, in fact, it's not on this one. But I'm going to add one that should be on this list, which is mind reading. So you add overgeneralization to mind reading, and you've got a path for disaster with your book. I mean, with your school, right? So one or two or three instances, and suddenly you generalize that to the to your entire student population, or you generalize it to everybody within a 10-mile radius of your school, right? Number two is the mind reading thing. And we get this almost every meeting as well. Well, what they think is, well, you don't know what they think. In fact, after you've asked them like 22 questions, frankly, you still don't know what they think, because they lie to you, distort, overgeneralize, smoke screen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? It's in part why all the political polling the last couple times around have been so off, right? Because one, there's a sampling error on who they can actually get hold of, and number two is just because you ask the question doesn't mean they tell the truth. So, for instance, why Trump got so much more vote than because it was the wrong answer to give to the poller. But if you look at this and we start looking at some of this stuff, see, number one on the list is filtering. And it says here, focusing on the negative, ignoring the positive. And that goes back to the way you think about the NLP model. That's a simplistic way of saying that objective reality is getting filtered by what your existing belief system is. If you're in the mood to be, and you're predisposed to be, and you're ready to be depressed about the news or about an event, then you'll only take out of that what is the stuff that creates that depression. And if you're predisposed to be optimistic, then you'll take out just the stuff that's optimistic. Okay. Tony Robbins, if you listen to him a lot, and myself, all of our staff, and all of my friends that I worked together over the years, many years ago, did everything that Tony had ever done, including June Reed promoted him to black belt. Ernie Reyes Jr. was dating his daughter at one time. I mean, there was a lot of martial arts ties back when. But Tony, in his language and in his conversations, and many times he doesn't explain it, but he'll say things like, my delusion is, right? And what he means by my delusion is that I have a thought about the way things are. It's not an objective reality. It's my thought about the way things are. Any thought that I have about the way things are is going to be subjective, not objective. And therefore, I choose my delusion to be things that are going to support my success and my growth, rather than choosing my delusion to be things that put up barriers and roadblocks and keep me from growing. Does that make sense? And it's exactly what we're seeing. And, for many years with my staff, I always used it in the frame of character. Disaster, hard times, difficulties, they don't create character, they reveal character, right? We're in a situation where 25 to 50% of our industry is going to go belly up. It's starting to happen now, because it takes a little while for the landlords to evict them, and for the guy who's already depressed and thinks he can't do anything to finally throw in the towel, and the money to run out of the bank account, and one thing or another. I've seen two pretty high profile people throw in the towel just in the last couple of days. But the reason is, one, their mental ability to interpret events and react appropriately wasn't there. And number two, they didn't have good guidance on what to do, right? So not to take too much credit, because, in our case, we have a whole bunch of people who we worked with hand in hand and hand in glove, during this process. Many of them thrived and a few of them imploded, right? Exactly the same advice. Well, it's all in the way they interpreted, they looked at it, they filtered it, and it's in whether they got off their ass and went and implemented, or whether they just listened to it and then went back to their own way of unproductive thinking. Is this making sense to everybody? So going back to the cognitive behavioral therapy, let's look at a few of these others. I'm not gonna go into it forever. Again, this could be a week seminar, but let's talk about polarized thinking. How does that manifest itself? No one wants to do martial arts right now, so therefore, why am I going to spend money trying to get them in? Well, anytime you say no one, goes back to NLP 5-finger pointers. Anytime you say no one, you're wrong, right? There are some that do. But you've got to moderate what you say. Never is one of those things that's almost always wrong as well. But you jump to conclusions. It's either great or it's awful, right? Now, in this context, today's news is that in June, the job numbers are up 5 million. Okay. In the last 2 months, the job numbers are up 7.5 million. Let me give you two possible interpretations. The delusion that helps you grow and become more successful, and the delusion that takes you on a spiraling downward path. Well, I can look at that number and say, well, okay, but there's still 11% unemployment. So I don't care that it's not 20%. It's still 11%. Unemployment has doubled, more than doubled, maybe tripled since February. There's still 11% employment. Plus, for God's sake, Florida and Texas and all these damn Republican governors, they open too fast. There's spikes. That idiot Trump did a rally and nobody had masks. And by the way, all these BLM guys were out there and they were packed wall to wall, and they're spreading this crap everywhere. So there's going to be another spike. They're going to shut everything down. And, you know, the 11 million are all people who are impoverished anyway, and it's getting even worse, right? So I can have that interpretation. It's not objectively true. It's not objectively false. It's just a subjective reaction to today's news, which is going to spiral you down into further abysmal results, right? Or I can have my reaction of, holy crap, that is double what anybody would have expected. Last time on the jobs report, it was up 2 million. Everybody expected it to be down 5 million. That's a $7 million or a 7 million person swing. The economy is V-shaping faster than anybody would have possibly expected. As soon as the switch starts coming back on, everybody wants to be out there spending money. They're anxious to do something productive. Most of them want to be safe, but they're anxious to do something productive. They have money in their pocket. They want to spend it. In fact, most of the ones that don't have the money in their pocket is the same category that normally don't have money in their pocket, right? So I can have that reaction to the news, right? Now, which delusion is going to take you to optimistically and aggressively taking action with the expectation that your business can not only survive, but thrive and grow? Would everybody say the second one, right? So in reality, all of this stuff you have to be aware of all the time. And the arguments and conversations, and, you know, Master Moody has his degree and he's got a background in therapy. I'm more of the therapy mode of slap it out of you. You know, I'm not exactly empathetic if you haven't gotten the idea. But regardless of all of that, our conversations with people who feel like they're going down for the third time are exactly that subjective overreaction, overgeneralization, catastrophizing about, if it wasn't this event, they would be overgeneralizing and catastrophizing about something else. Is that making sense so far? And I shared both of these in the Facebook group, as well as gave you the link where you can find these. I don't attest anything else on those pages. I was just looking for these two particular graphics. Yeah, go ahead, Master.
Put something really fast in, since you brought me up. Yeah. I think everything you're saying is spot on. And there's a lot of you on the call that may have internal dialogue right now. That's exactly what's going on that he's talking about. Yeah, but my area. We've heard, yeah, but, oh, I can't do it because of this, because nobody has access to internet. Yeah, because nobody has access. And it's exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I'm going next, Master Moody. So you're right on track with where I wanted to go.
Well, yeah, but so watch your internal dialogue right now, because here's the thing that you got to realize. There's people that are very successful, and we have examples in our group. They're just in the higher level meetings that are doing 100,000 a month, that are doing 70,000 a month. There are people that have exactly the same situation as you. And the difference is what he's talking about right now. This is one of the most powerful and most important meetings you guys could possibly have. And I'm really glad you did this, or you didn't even tell me you were going to do this. Otherwise, you made a bigger deal out of it. This is, you know, so I'm ranting a little bit right now, but the internal dialogue you may be having now, yeah, but me. The thing that should be in your head is, what's the guys that are doing 100,000? Some of the guys are on the call now, and then this is just improvement in value.
Yeah, I warned them we were going to put them to work if they showed up, so that's great. We got Paul and Amanda who
all of us. I mean, even for all of us to improve in all these areas, because we all do this some. You're never perfect in these areas either. But that internal dialogue, if you think, yeah, but there's people in your situation. The difference is this stuff. And we're giving you the tools and techniques, but the difference is this stuff. So anyway, thanks for letting me know.
Well, let me continue with what you were just saying, because that was where I was going next, Master Moody. You mind read effectively this time.
Sometimes it does work.
Yeah. Well, it's not like we don't know how each other thinks pretty well. Here is some mythologies, and I mean it exactly this because it's complete horseshit. Here's some mythologies that we keep hearing. And by the way, before I get to that, the worst thing you can do in business, and it's not just you, big companies, massive multi-billion-dollar companies that really should know better, and usually they're just morons at the top doing this shit. They also, when there's a recession, when there's something like this, they cut their ad budgets. It's the dumbest thing they could do. You never cut the ad budget when things are rough, and you never cut the sales staff. I mean, that's number one and number two. Mindy, you remember me talking about that with your previous idiots, right? So you never cut the sales staff and you never cut the ad budget. But what you've got to do when things get more difficult in the market objectively is you double down on your marketing, you don't cut back. If it takes me doing 15 things a month to get 15 new students and things get like they are right now, I better be doing 30 things, right? I don't roll back into a ball and stop doing anything, because that's the dumbass loser reaction to this kind of market, okay? Now, here's mythology. Mythology number one, students don't want to do Zoom. Well, bullshit. Students want to do what they can do right now. If they can't go into the school and there's 30 people and we're all kicking and punching and yelling and punching each other and grappling and choking each other the hell out and you know, arm bars and all that stuff, they can't do that. They want to get as close as they can to that in the current environment, okay? It's very rare that anybody who would be of the income demographic that we're in for our students, I mean, we're not talking about poor people, you know, they're in the ghetto and they don't have a computer at home and they don't have internet access at home. That shouldn't be who you have anyway, right? So pretty much anybody that we're going to attract in the school, they have multiple devices. Essentially everybody, it's an overgeneralization, but in the US and Canada and the UK, every damn body has a smartphone. Almost all of them have a tablet. Essentially all of them have internet connection and Wi-Fi in their home. And essentially all of them have some type of computer, even if it's only a tablet or it's a, you know, a smartphone, right? But if they have a smartphone, hell, if they don't, you know, if they don't have a way to prop it up, send them a damn tripod. You know, they're easy enough to get. They're $5, right? But they almost all, if they're a good prospect for us, they have internet connection. They have a ton of devices laying around the house. One or both parents has probably already done meetings using Zoom or similar platforms. They're familiar with the process now. The kids are oftentimes doing it with school. They've done it, some of this stuff virtual. They've used Google Classroom. They've used Zoom or comparables. They're familiar with it. So we hear over and over and over again, you know, my students don't want to do Zoom. Bullshit. They want to do what you were doing before, and they're unable to do it right now. So therefore, they want to do, in most cases, what they can do right now. Would they rather be face-to-face with you? Well, some of them are freaked out enough they don't feel comfortable with that at all, right? Others would love to be doing that if you're wearing a mask and they're wearing a mask and you're 8 feet away and you hand sanitize every 12 seconds and, you know, they're wearing disposable gloves, right? Others would like to just be back to normal and forget this thing exists, right? There's that spectrum. But don't use the excuse that they don't want to be on video conference, because they want to do what they can do right now, right? It's not like they don't want to do video conference. They'd rather be further up the spectrum on all this other stuff. That's great too, right? Right now in most areas.
Can I add something right while you're on that, yes, Mr. Oliver? Because what everybody is doing is forgetting that if you had a dropout problem before, let's say your percentages were just a little bit high than you wanted, those things are going to compound with the Zoom, because everybody is not using the card system with the 3 boxes, with that whole retention at the end of the week and making calls and getting them back in and following the same, how many times did Master Oliver say, follow the same procedures you were doing before? I was talking to people that still weren't giving out stripes. They have got to be emailing those sheets into you. You've got to make a big deal out of it. At the end of every class, they're getting the stripes. They come by and pick them up, or you mail them to them. You praise those that are doing it. Some of them weren't even giving those out, medals and trophies out at the graduations. You've got to do all of that, stay on top of your retention. And for some, their retention really stayed the same. The difference was they weren't doing any marketing to get any intros. So now it compounds the problem, because now we have people going out with nobody coming in to take their place. So you got to do both ends of it. I got to get more coming in, and I got to keep those in there. And I got to make sure you're utilizing the systems that we've showed you that are available to you to make sure. And if you don't have those, make sure that you're on that meeting next week that we're going to be covering, because that's what I'm going to go over, is how to get those students on that Zoom meeting to make it fun, to prevent your dropout, and how to solve that problem. And then the next one after that, we're going to be talking about how to get more of new people back in.
Yeah, and now you jumped the gun on me too, but that is good, because we were going there. So, So on topic, myth number one is that they can't or won't do virtual classes. They might prefer to be with you face-to-face if it was allowable, and if it's allowable in your area now, great, and if it's not allowable, so be it, right? Again, remember, this is like a dimmer switch. It's going to open up, and then it's going to maybe close back down a little bit. It's going to be a gradual thing. I think for the foreseeable future, we're simulcasting every class by Zoom, every class, by the way. MJ, you put something up there, every class. And you're doing classes in the park, and you're doing social distance classes in your facility, and you're doing masks, wash their hands, and HEPA filters on the HVAC with UV light, all that stuff, right? But stay on this. The mythology number two. And this really just aggravates me, because it's one of my pet peeves. People won't pay this much as we want us to charge for virtual classes. Well, we know that's a mythology, because, Amanda Olson, to her great credit, kicked off doing April, 31 people, 100% virtual on the normal price sheet. Right? Now, if I'm enrolling somebody for a year enrollment, I'm probably not, there's some exceptions, but I'm probably not saying this is, for all the way down in Black Belt, you're just doing it on video. I'm saying, well, we're going to be doing everything we can, including additional curriculum support and videos you can watch online, additional assignments online. We're going to be doing virtual classes. We're going to be doing classes in the park, and we're going to be in the school. And be safely and social distancing and so forth. And if things get back to normal, we'll be back to normal. And in the meantime, we're going to be doing all of those options for you, right? So, Amanda's on the meeting, so I warned her and Jan and Paul that I was going to put them to work. But Jan or Amanda, as long as I'm on that topic, tell us about your enrollment results, April, May, virtual and pricing and all that stuff.
So in April and May, we ended up with 42 enrollments, new members, and it was the same monthly price, $247 a month, as what we normally charge. And we did, I did discount the enrollment, but to be honest with you, I don't think I should have had to do that. Just kind of a mental hurdle to get over.
And full disclosure, I yelled at you about it.
Right. As well you should have. And then, as students started coming back into the school, right now, pretty much our entire basic class is people that we have just started meeting for the first time in person, but we've built a relationship over Zoom. And some of the students are still continuing on Zoom because they're not coming in, and we're just going on just as normal, and pretty excited about that, because as things are kind of dialing up and dialing down, Zoom is just going to become part of our regular. It's not going away.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a marketing standpoint, you more than anybody, Amanda, so good, kudos to you. You have been really good at creating a media presence for yourself, an expert presence. You're doing the Master Mom thing. You're on TV with that. You're getting lots of press coverage about that and everything else. But would I be correct in saying most of the traffic, the last point of them taking the action was Facebook, and arguably part of your incredible Facebook results is you become a little media superstar in your area. You're doing a great job online. Otherwise, you're out in the community wherever you can. You're doing a ton of other stuff to create that influence. Is that a fair way to say it?
It is. The Parthenon that you hammer into us is something that I had going really strong, and about that last week and a half of March, I was, I fell into, I've got to stop spending all money and just stop that. And then I realized there was no way I was going to make it if I was not enrolling people. So I really actually doubled down on a lot of the Facebook marketing. And, I called Master Moody about our website too, our SEO, and just kind of talked some strategies there. Because I knew that the only way people were going to see us were going to be online. And so also with the media that I have, the TV station, radio, and even our print newspaper, I was able to call them and say, hey, this is what a small business is doing here locally, how we're staying open and active in the community. And they all kind of jumped on the opportunity to tell that story, something positive in the news. So those relationships were, just all of it together. Even last week, even though we are still kind of a hybrid of in-person and Zoom, we're putting out the bandit signs. I'm just not going to slow down on the marketing, because it is going to get us all the way through this and then beyond.
Yeah.
I think a danger of the internal dialogue some people might be having, Amanda, would be that, and I just want to interject here, that somebody might be saying, oh yeah, but that's Amanda Olson. She's in a really big city. She must be in a really big city. And they may be thinking in their minds that, oh, and she's the media superstar, but you weren't always the media superstar. And, your city is really huge, isn't it?
Our population is 65,000. I'm up in the Appalachian Mountains in East Tennessee, one of the poorest communities in our country. So I am not, our median income here is around 40,000 a year. I'm not a metropolis, and really, I think when I first joined this group, hearing Kobe Winkler talk about, we had the same kind of size town, and he was doing a great job. That really gave me confidence that, okay, if he's doing it, I can do it. So hopefully that's what some of you guys are hearing today. But
yeah. 60,000. Sorry to interrupt you, but let's clarify the 60,000 people. That's 60,000 people a long way away from you. It's not 60
people driving 15 to 20 miles to my studio. Absolutely.
Right. So some of you might be thinking, oh yeah, but I only have 30,000 people. But yeah, but that's still probably comparable to what Amanda's dealing with too. It's in a long distance apart, long big geographical area. So again, you should be hearing this, I think, and going, Amanda's awesome. But if you're hearing this, you should be thinking, I could do that too. And that's, I think, what you'd encourage people to think, right, Amanda?
Absolutely. It really is in your head. And as far as media presence, Master Oliver at one of our marketing meetings, he said, align yourself with the celebrities in your hometown. And so that's exactly what I did. Just went back in and said, okay, who are people watching? How do I get connected with them?
And that 40,000, median income, remember that is a poor community. If anybody had a reason to say they can't afford to pay the tuition now, they want to quit because the husband's not working or whatever. But you see, when they're ingrained into the system, the parents aren't going to sacrifice the kids because they place an importance. So she developed that social proof and that rapport with the parents where, you know, $240 or, you know, $250 a month to keep your kid during this pandemic, to keep him in a positive mode, both mentally and physically, is a small investment to make compared with other things that they might be spending that money on.
Oh, and I see Tim Harrison's staff here. Is Master Harrison here?
He's in a chiropractor appointment right now, but he's
okay.
Dial back in a little bit.
I want to tell you guys, I just took a little bit of a pressure off your back because Master Harrison was 2 hours ago frustrated, irritated, and pissed off that in May, his numbers were within 2% of 2019, but off the plan to be up 20%. And he was frustrated that he hadn't hit plan to be up 20% and was just, you know, plus or minus even from last year. So what I told him is he could take great pressure off himself in the worst crisis and worst pandemic that we've ever seen in the United States to be even, but keep holding the staff accountable for plan and keep kicking their ass on that one. So just so you know, well, I guess that didn't help you much, but that was a conversation that we had. In fact, it's less than 2 hours ago. It was at about 11:15. But great job there, guys. Hey, Paul, jump in here. We'll put Jan here to work as well, since I recruited you guys to jump in here. Tell us about both your experience with those who aren't thinking right, but also your experience with your school.
Unmute.
He's unmuted. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Experience has been, I tell you, it's been, I always praise you because, you know, we jumped on board really quick with the guidelines and the recommendations that you made. And, you know, add that onto the things that we normally would do, the, you know, attendance calls and stripes and testing and postcards and all that stuff. And we're good. We're good. I mean, we're off a little bit, but I mean, we're still putting some business on. We're keeping students. The feedback that we're getting from parents all the time is really good. Unlike some schools I know that are in my area, I know 2 of them that went out of business. I know another 2 of them that are down 50 to 60%. I know another guy he's done absolutely nothing, and he's going to wait until after July 8th. When they come back, he'll start doing things. So on my end, I mean, we're working probably harder than we probably worked in a while, you know, just to keep everybody. But the feedback from parents.
Well, I got to tell you, Paul, not to be snarky with all the wonderful things you're saying, and you know, if you appreciate it that much, you could have just sent the Jaguar to me rather than trading it on that Mercedes. That was a beautiful car. I have tears from it, but you should have just kept it and gotten the new one. But what I was going to say on that is, you know, you're the guy that I love to harass because it seems like you spend half your life in the Virgin Islands with a beautiful blonde or a beautiful trio.
Yeah, I like to get away. I like to get away. I like to, you know, like to work, but I like to get away as well. So.
Yeah.
And Paul does have 2 schools, so you know,
yeah.
He's got his staff that he's trained, but you know, doing that, and they're doing a hell of a job because he did a hell of a job training them.
Well, thank you. No, I'm blessed. I have a great bunch of guys and girls that work with me. We try to stick to a regiment of meetings and training, staff training. One of the things that resonated me with things I learned from Master Smith and Master Oliver and the group, of course, Master Moody. You training the staff like you would train them on a technique.
Yeah.
So if you train on this kata or this form or this sparring technique, or do that on the phone, do that with your sign up, and I think that was a huge part but my guys have really rose up to the occasion. I mean, we had the mindset like, failure is not an option.
Well, your mindset too that I really respected, Paul, is that you started teaching classes outdoors and getting your students back live, in person, long before the state has even told you could do it.
You
weren't buying into that stay home and forget all that. You were
I
out
was
there.
being a bad boy. I opened up. I mean, we've been doing this a month now. I opened up June 1st. We did it with limited seating, pre-registration, social distancing, sanitize hands, mask. And we did like 3 days a week. And then we did that for about 2 weeks. And then we just hit it. We just hit it full schedule, and everybody came back. And one of the things I thought was interesting, I was waiting for the shoe to drop. I was waiting for parents to say, this is scary. You're not being safe. I mean, I was looking for all the things. My mind started to drift that way. And then I said, well, wait a minute. What are we doing? We're doing the same thing we've always done. We just got some guidelines. And then if I had one person say it, I'd had probably 5 people say it. They said, this is an essential business for our children.
Yeah.
And that hit me. I went and I looked at a couple of dads and moms, and I said, this is essential. My boy needs this. My daughter needs this. The focus, the social outlet, the discipline. So they kept telling me all the wonderful things that we do for them. So those are the ones that are coming out and they want to be part of it. So the experience, it's been a shitty experience for all of us. I mean, no doubt. I mean, but
well, hell, the movie theaters are still closed, for God's sake.
Gyms are still closed in my state. You can't go to. I haven't. Normally I go to a gym for the last couple of years, and my guys have been closed for 4 months now.
Yeah, mine just opened this week. I'm happy.
And for those who don't know it, Paul, you're kind of for
New Jersey.
For March, April, May, you are really in the belly of the beast, right?
Yes.
So you're not New York City Metro, but you're just a stone's throw out of New York City.
Right.
Metro.
Yeah. It's basically whatever New York was doing. Our great governor said, "Hey, we'll do the same thing."
Yeah.
And so we were like, in my mind, I did what we were supposed to do. I did it, and they asked me for 14 days. I gave them almost 4 months, and that's when I said June 1st, hey, I'm doing something. But we did it safely. We communicated with the parents. We called, we lettered, we emailed. I dropped books off. Also, all the recommendations that we were getting from the group put into action.
And you did it safely with, the social distancing and the other things. So
Correct.
The parents knew that you weren't just doing it haphazardly, but you were doing it safely, but still getting the kids back to a sense of normalcy.
Correct.
Well,
and they all appreciated that, Master Smith. They all, I mean, I have testimonials that I actually made into a book, and I emailed to our Facebook leads when they came in for, when they would go on virtual. So we did a lot of hard mailings too, but they all really respected and loved the idea of what we're doing for the kids, what you're doing for the kids, what you're doing for the kids. So it was always echoed. Hometown hero we became, I think, it felt good.
Well, you still, hang on just a half second, Master Moody. I'll come back. But Paul, on the opening, you stole my phrase of, and welcome to it, of I'd rather ask forgiveness than permission, right? But I wanted to pick up on something you said there, is you said you're doing all of the recommendations, because that's my next myth, that anyone who is failing, they almost always say, well, I'm doing everything you told me to do. Right, Master Smith? Right, Master Moody?
Yep.
I'm doing everything you told me to do. Okay.
Except.
But here's, so on the virtual, you started it, Paul. So let's go through the list. Did you do a new textbook and deliver it to each of the students individually? Right? I mean, you did. Did you keep your attendance cards for everybody and keep a normal Zoom schedule?
Yes.
Did you keep the stripes and the belts going on the same sequence in the same order?
Correct.
Yeah. And did you hammer them with over communication, physically, email, text, reminders, phone calls, every mechanism possible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, we could go through the list.
And his marketing, he did a lot of marketing too.
Yeah, but you're going to do over $1 million this year, and you're going to be even or up from over $1 million last year, with a good net to the bottom line, because you're doing all the stuff, right? And in your case, you've trained a great staff, so you deserve both a big bank account, but also, pleasurable vacations and new toys. And you and I talk about cars and watches all the time, but you deserve that. And there's nothing at all wrong with it because of what you're doing for the kids, and you're doing the right thing to earn the money, and you're having a huge impact. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with you.
I didn't think you were going to argue with me on that one, but
well, I almost made the mistake what you guys were talking about. I mean, and my knee-jerk reaction was not to spend money for advertising. And I thought about it. I was like, I'm spending a couple grand a month, and maybe I'll just ease up and keep that in my pocket for a rainy day. And then I heard what everybody was talking about, and I said no. So I just kept that going.
Yeah.
So and it worked out, because we did have signups. We plugged some holes. We still got our name out there. We're still getting leads, making appointments. So I'm glad I didn't crumble.
Yeah. Let's bring Jan into the conversation, although she says she's Rachel, but really it's Jan.
I don't know how to change her name, because when we switch the Zoom thing, I'm not real good at that stuff. So I'll be Rachel today.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Rachel's sister.
I'm Rachel's sister. I like that. Okay, kind of the same thing. I would say the same thing that Paul said, different from Amanda, because in the beginning, when it first happened, I was doom and gloom. I was watching the news 24/7, and I was like kind of in a bad place, projecting what was going to happen. All those things you just talked about, that was me. And then I started seeing what Amanda was doing, and I started hearing what the group, and it was possible to get people online. And of course, I tried like 7 of them. I had 2 people sign up virtual, and then they both canceled. And then I even polarized more, saying, oh, this isn't going to work. And then we started getting them, and it started working. So I lost about a month that we didn't, maybe 2 months. I don't even know how long it was, but we lost a little bit because we didn't do our advertising. We didn't push. We didn't do anything new. So we were down students. But the good news is we are still up. The last conference call we just had, I looked at where my numbers were from last year, because I didn't really know. I knew we were 14% behind goal. Our goal is $1.2 million. So we're only at 86% of that. But I looked at where we were from last year, we're up 11%. So I should still be happy. That's like another positive thing. And we're at 106,000 this month. So I'm not complaining. I'm just keeping it going. But it's
okay, Jan. So you're up
106 in June.
Yes, sir.
Well, let's say something else about Jan though as well.
Yeah, I think that's a big a little.
I'm happy with it.
That's a nice spotlight.
Yeah, well, let's put it in context. You're up 11%, while a huge number of people, most of them in our business, are catastrophizing, melting down, not taking action. So you're up 11% over last year, in the worst pandemic in 100 years, in a time when unemployment spiked because the entire country shut things down. And by the way, the hub of the biggest spike in the last month is not, it's basically where you're at, right?
Yes,
I mean,
and
so
last year was a record year. It wasn't just that last year you stumbled your way through. It was a record year, and now you're even above that. So
yeah, I remember not too long ago you were doing 40,000 a month.
But you guys
I remember thinking 50 was like unrealistic.
You guys are missing out on a big point. Jan. A lot of Jan's business was after school martial arts. So she's doing better and made it work. even though for some people, they just totally shut down because, you know, after everybody went home and they didn't have school, and you still made it work.
Well, you're missing the other point that Jan went on vacation for the entire month of June.
Well, that's true.
And it was her daughter running things.
The renewals.
About
The
that.
renewals really helped us. Renewing those people and getting a hire per person is really what made the difference for us.
Yeah.
And you know, it took me so long, and still, even I'll give you an example. Rachel texted me about 2 weeks ago and said we need to raise our rates again. I didn't answer her. I'm still, we're at $249 a month. She wants to be over $3, and I'm just.
I think Rachel's in charge of your pricing, not you.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime she has a good idea, just say yes.
I think you better just check with her, Jan, rather than her checking with you.
Yeah. And just have a conversation with Rachel. Anytime I don't answer, just assume it's yes. There you go. I
think it's fair to point out too, Master Oliver, Jansen, you know, not a big town either. I mean, she's again another small town, Middleburg, Florida. It's, you know, it's not a big metropolis as well. So
well, and Jan whines all the time about how broke everybody is there.
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
Well, kind of.
Some of them.
Not your students, though.
No.
Well, yeah, some of her students too, but I'm just telling you, for everybody else's benefit, Jan, we love you to death. Congratulations, you deserve the night out on the town and another vacation. And by the way, you're the most hard-headed SOB that we've ever come across. And you know, you whine more about how broke everybody is in that area than anybody I've heard recently.
I laugh when I hear other people do it, though. Because I just sit here and smile when they say, well, you don't understand my area. Well, you don't know. I just laugh because it's a process that I had to go through. I had to believe it, you know. I still have to go through it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you still are going
through
it.
I'm still there.
Rachel is your ace in the hole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's address the other myth here really quick. And I had 2 or 3 people post, oh, you don't understand, everybody's unemployed. Let me ask Jan, Amanda, and Paul, what percentage of your students did you actually have in a panic, want to cancel their program or not pay their bills? Honestly, what were the numbers? So we have Brick, New Jersey-ish. Paul, what did you have on that?
I'd say it would be about 10%.
Yeah. Okay. Jan?
You know, I was going to guess the same thing. I don't know exactly, but probably around 10%.
Okay. And and for both of you, were those people who, you know, can't pay for a couple of months, or are those people who just bailed and wouldn't return phone calls and their payment didn't go through?
Most of mine we need to, like, I'm freezing their account for a few months.
Yeah.
And then we'll see. Although it's been delayed now, it's frozen for a few more.
Yeah, you give them a little discount. Yeah.
Some of my parents were in the hospitality business, so they were out of work. So we put a freeze on it. But I gotta say, my guys are real diligent. We put a lot of those people right back on, like last month.
Yeah. And to interpret, they're staying in class and you're insisting they stay in class. Correct. Doing everything you can to get them to stay in class.
Yep.
And working with them financially. Correct. And you'll worry about it later, right? Yep. And if it were me, I wouldn't be adding the balance to the end. I would just be, you know, those couple months are gratis. It's on us. So, you know, don't worry about it.
Yeah, we made a point to make sure that they were always on Zoom. Made sure they were on our list to make sure we delivered books to them. So we didn't like look the other way because they had a financial. They were still members and they were still part of the group, and service them just as good as we would somebody who was paying.
Yeah, if not better, right?
So important to keep track of all those, because if you're not doing the attendance, checking every class, using those attendance cards, you know, that old system where I'm just going to scan it or just go onto the computer, you got to have that physical card and use that system if you want to get your dropout percentages to a better retention.
Yeah. And Amanda, same question for you.
We're at, currently we're at about 12%.
Yeah. And Amanda, you know, my mother worked with an organization by the name of Project Concern International for, I don't know, 40, 50 years. And I remember when I was in high school, we went to 3 of the most impoverished places in the world where they work. We went to Appalachia, Tennessee, and rode around with the big RV dental clinics that they have. Because in Appalachia, all their teeth are horrible, and everybody, not everybody, but you know, they think that having constant pain in their teeth is normal because they've grown up without having a dentist. The other 2 were Tijuana,
Johnson City, Tennessee.
yeah, probably so. And the other 2, I don't remember, to tell you the truth. The other 2 were Guatemala and Tijuana. Right.
Right.
And
right. I mean,
so,
you're telling the truth.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But we rode around in their dental vans. I don't know if they still work there or not. The organization was Project Concern International.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few mobile medical facilities here. Yeah.
But you know, for any of those who think, oh, you don't understand, you know, my area. And by the way, the funniest ever is the ones who say, oh, you don't understand. I hate to pick on him because he's a wonderful human being, but Ernie Reyes Sr. is, my story was I was doing a meeting for all of their staff, and this is years ago, and I turned to Ernie and I said, Ernie, why in the hell in Silicon Valley are you charging half of what I'm charging in Denver, Colorado? If you don't know where they are, Silicon Valley is the stretch that's between San Francisco and San Jose. And it's right in the middle is Stanford University. So that's where you have Apple, HP, Google, I mean, you know, all of the big tech companies. And he said to me with a straight face, he said, you don't understand, the cost of living here is so high, that's all that they can afford. And I turned to him, I said, Ernie, you know, my 2 handicaps are I have a degree in international economics from Georgetown University and an MBA. And the reason why any of the expenses that are different than anywhere else in the country are high is because it has too much money chasing too few goods. There's this thing called supply and demand. So the reason why you buy a shack in Silicon Valley for what you'd buy a mansion for in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is that people are making a ton of money in Silicon Valley. And there's money, right? He just could not get that through his head. So that, you know, people make that other excuse. We had another gentleman who was literally in the financial district in New York City who said the same thing. It was just the dumbest possible reaction. But anyway, so let's thank you guys for that feedback, and let's go to the next myth, because it's back where I wanted to go, and we started it here with Paul. Is people say, well, I'm doing everything you told me to do. Well, I can tell you the number one that's almost universal of any conversation we have, good times, bad times, pandemic, no pandemic, high unemployment, low unemployment, great economy, horrible economy. The number one most consistent is they say, I'm doing everything you told me to do. And then I tend to start with marketing checklists. And usually they're just scratching the surface. They're doing 1 or 2 things, or they have one thing planned for next month and they did something last month. Is the rule number 1 is in normal times, if you want 20 new students a month, have 20 things going on. Never expect anything to be a home run. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you're at the big AMC multiplex when, you know, the last Avengers movie comes out, or you just hit a gold run, home run with some big event, or you hit a home run on Facebook or something like that, or you hit a home run in an elementary school outreach. But the home runs are unusual. What's normal is to get a lot of strikeouts and base hits, right? So what's usual is I do 10 things that are, let's say, all grassroots marketing. I have a bunch of rack cards out. I have a bunch of bandit signs out. I have a big banner on the school. I have a big balloon on the school. I have flyers on the pizza boxes and, you know, 5 other things. And it feels like none of it's working. But then I'm still getting 5, 7, 10 enrollments a month, right? And nobody comes in with the rat card in hand, but I know if I wasn't doing all of that stuff, I would be getting like nothing, right? So what I have to do is I have to overlay. So I've got to be constantly mailing to all of my prospects. And by that, I don't mean email. I've got to be constantly direct mailing my prospects, constantly emailing them, using text messaging. I've got to be looking at business co-promotions. I've got to be constantly, and of our group, Amanda, you're probably the superstar right now on the publicity side. In the martial arts and the history of the world, June Ree's got to be the all-time best ever at this. But he was constantly changing, and it didn't matter what it was, who it was, or where it was. But in D.C., he was constantly in the Washington Post. He was in every little newspaper. He was on ABC, CBS, NBC. He was on, when CNN came around, he was on CNN. One of the things he got on was every 30 minutes on the update on CNN. Everywhere in the world, there was a news blip about him for like 12 or 24 hours. He was constantly chasing publicity. Now, the thing about
who else could get the Democrats versus the Republicans in a contact sparring match?
Yeah.
Who possibly could have done that? Who takes Muhammad Ali to Korea? Who gets him to fight a Japanese karate guy? I mean, the stuff that he pulled off was just phenomenal.
Oh yeah, and you can go on and on with that, right? He had Ali at the opening of the Falls Church School, among an awful lot of
Bruce Lee at the opening of the Bowie School. I mean, the Bruce Lee, not Bruce Lee, but the real Bruce Lee. I mean, who would come to his tournaments, who would come to a grand opening. I mean, this is the kind of marketing that he was so good at.
Well, and I learned about movie theater marketing by hearing stories of everything that the Junri Institute did when Enter the Dragon was released, right? And I learned about TV advertising because we had to waste Saturday night, every damn Saturday night, sitting in the school waiting for the 30-second spots to come on the Kung Fu TV series, because he was advertising, with the role that David Carradine stole from Bruce Lee every time it came on. So,
and who else? When the Ninja Turtle, the very first one, came out, who could possibly get the turtles, the actual turtles, that the guys who played the turtles, all four of them, to come to a special movie theater performance at 6 movie theaters?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, I actually did that too, because that was 80s, not 70s. But
yeah, I was just saying generation. It didn't matter whether 70s, the 80s. It didn't matter.
Yeah,
he was doing it.
But so myth next that we come across is people will say, well, I'm doing everything you're telling me to do. And in good times or bad, I have yet to come across somebody who really was doing squat for marketing. I should have had, maybe I'll pull it up while we're talking. I may be dating myself, but everybody remember the character, the Tasmanian Devil? And in the shows, he'd come in and, a whirlwind of activity. Well, that's the way my staff always thought about me, including the devil part, by the way. Because anytime I was in one of the school, it was, what are those two guys doing out leaning against the wall? Well, they're here to SWAT, but they don't have anything going on. Well, load their ass up in the car and let's have them do flyers down at the Target Center. Well, the Target Center doesn't want us to do flyers. Well, have you ever gotten caught? Well, no. Okay, go. Let's go get them out doing targets at the Target Center. Well, let's. How long do we have? We have 3 hours. Okay, let's get them doing door hangers. Let's get them all on the phone. They all look like they're 17, 18, 19. Let's have a contest. Let's go through the prospect list, and whoever gets the most new prospects here in the next 2 hours, we're going to buy them dinner, right? I mean, just constant, never-ending whirlwind of activity. But that's what you've got to be. You've got to be this constant, never-ending whirlwind of activity, especially on the marketing. But I would say it even differently is if it's normally that I need to have 20 things going on at a time, guess what? You got the worst pandemic in 100 years. Make it 40, right? Is you've got to ramp way the hell up in order to have that that activity going on. Does that make sense? What you don't do is you don't cut back. You don't catastrophize and mind read and say nobody wants to, they won't do it. You know, you've already seen example after example after example of the fact that they will do it, right? It's just that you've got to ramp up every different thing that you can do. You've got to ramp up direct mail. You've got to ramp up email. You've got to ramp up text messaging as follow-up. You've got to ramp up retargeting. And you've got to get out with all of the business co-promotion stuff you do. You've got to get out with publicity and become a local star in your area. You've got to be on TV and be on radio and be in the newspaper. And I'm talking about real media, not just like online crap. But that's useful too, right? But you want to be out in real media, and you want to make sure that you have the Facebook ads going. Again, I recommend Elite Digital that we work with. They're doing a really good job. You got to put a little bit of a budget into it, $1,500, couple thousand a month, but they're doing a bang up job for everybody. By the way, on the online marketing, the very first thing that happens, this is true of the SEO marketing as well with Go to Karate that we recommend. But the number one thing that happens, especially on marketing in a vacuum like TV is and Facebook is when somebody pulls the trigger on that, is the first thing that happens is say, oh, these are flaky leads and their conversion rate is crappy because they're not ready to handle the flow and they're not ready to really be on top of it. But again, myth number one, go ahead.
I was going to say, and also if they're not marketing well at all, and the only people that ever came in were people that were buddies and friends or desperately wanted to do martial arts, you get this delusion that you're a good salesperson, and you get this delusion that, you know, this is the way sales and leads are going to be, that when you get normal people in, you think that they're bad leads, that normal people are bad leads, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you don't market at all, the only people that you're ever going to see are people that are sort of desperate to do martial arts. And then you start marketing to get the normal population, and well, you got to actually know how to talk to them. So yeah, that could be that's why they don't handle them as well either.
Oh, that's exactly right. I had a luncheon meeting yesterday with a financial advisor that I'm working with. And that was the conversation I had, is all of his traffic is on family, friend, referred leads. I said, look, we can quadruple the volume coming through, but you're going to have a mechanism for following through and qualifying people who aren't necessarily qualified until we can get them down to the ones that are qualified. It's a completely different method. And like we've said many times, Master Moody, to follow up, is we always want to start with making sure we're really tight on the conversion processes and really tight on the follow-up, because if you multiply 5 times the amount of lead traffic, they're not going to be as solid as the referral that had to track you down. And by the way, here's the Tasmanian devil, if you can see, for those of you who don't remember the cartoon. But use that in your mind and with your staff to just constant flurry of activity. You know, McDonald's, it's if you have time to lean, clean. For us, if you have time to lean, you should be doing 10 marketing activities. It's got to be constant and never ending. But in that context, shift back to what you said, that I cut you off a little bit earlier, Master Smith. Here's a conversation we've had before, and I want to go back to doing everything we say, but here's a conversation we've had 10 times. Oh my God, my student count is way down because of the pandemic. Okay, you said this already. I'm going to repeat what you said, Master Smith. Well, how many did you lose in April? Yeah, what turns out to be 5 or 6%. What did you lose in May? 5 or 6%. What did you lose in June? 5 or 6%. Well, 6 times 3 is 18. Add the end of March, add March, you're now at 25%. You could be down 25% just through your normal course of dropouts if you haven't enrolled that many people at the same time, right? So rule number one, write it down, tattoo it on your left hand. Never, ever, ever can you have a month, a day, a week when you're not enrolling new students, because no matter how good you are, you're not going to keep 100%. No matter what happens, a tornado hits your town in the midst of the tsunami, and there's a pandemic and a stock market crash all at the same time. What do? You quadruple your marketing efforts. That's got to be your first reaction. If you're pushing rope, if you feel like because of the market, you double, triple, quadruple down, right? This is like the old Wall Street Journal story. You know, person A, person B, 3 months later. Person number one, which will remain nameless, decides that it's a catastrophe, pulls all of his budget. Amanda, I'll use Amanda as the example. Person number two figures out a catastrophe, pumps up the budget, right? Person number one is down 60% active count. Concludes, people, I don't have time to do privates with everybody. Nobody ever suggested that. People won't enroll virtually. They won't pay that much virtually for virtual lessons. And I'm going to pull all my advertising budget and cut off all my Facebook advertising because nobody's going to respond right now. Amanda, how did Facebook work in March, April, and May?
It was, I mean, we usually have a really good flow, but it was insane, actually. I mean, we were doing group intros over Zoom just because we didn't have time in the day to do individual ones.
Yeah.
It was intense.
Yeah. See, catastrophe also brings opportunities. Big, stupid companies, and part of it is virtue signaling moronic crap. But big, stupid companies pulled their ad budget during this. So guess what? Facebook's cost per advertising went down. The engagement went up 640%. I think that's the number you said, Master Moody.
Right.
Is 6 times the engagement, meaning hours and time spent of people looking at social media. Talk about a sure way for them not to recover. And at the same time, the cost for the advertising went down because big companies pouring money into it pulled out the money, right? Is that an opportunity or is that a problem? Holy crap, it's a massive opportunity. Guess what also happened? People were reading their email. Guess what also happened? People are eagerly waiting in the mailman and going out to the mailbox and opening their mail, reading their mail. Why? Because they're bored. They're working from home. They're essentially under house arrest, and they're looking for distractions, right? So direct mail worked better. Email worked. What would you guess as a percentage, Master Moody? I would guess it improved 500% or more during this.
We know that the email open rates were higher, and we know that the click-through rates were higher. The data is kind of all over the board, but we know that it did work better. So, you know, there's just evidence again and again. Google AdWords rates were down because some advertisers pulled back. So here's the thing with that. The view rates were up. The search rates were up. Many advertisers pulled back, so you got more value. So there were two factors going on. One is your click rate. So those of you who are doing Google AdWords, you were getting better cost per click, and because you had less competition. Because that's the same with Facebook advertising. The less people that are advertising, the lower your rates are per impression per click. And so you got more viewers at less cost per view, less cost per click. So all of those things should have factored in if you were pounding the market at that time. Now it's evened out a little bit, but it's still a good time to keep doing that. It's still better than it was pre-COVID.
Oh yeah. So
and by the way, just to not interrupt you, it's good. You got to do both of them. And one thing Amanda's doing is she's doing a lot of other marketing. She's doing a lot of organic marketing and AdWords and Facebook. And those things interact. If you have a lousy website, then you could dump a whole bunch of money in marketing, but 45% of people that, so your Parthenon concept works online too, 45% of people, and maybe higher now, that see your Facebook ad will look you up as well. And the best leads are the ones that see you there and also fill out your form and do the other stuff. So they see you in lots of places, because then they're getting, it would just be like in the old days when we'd educate them with a couple direct mail pieces and they'd see us in a bunch of different spots. That
Right.
lead quality, the appointment show rate, and everything is going to go up.
Yeah, and don't forget the online reviews. That's again a pre-COVID stat I saw was something like 80% of soccer moms. So if you're in the family market, 80% of soccer moms, plus or minus, will go Google you before they come in. So and why are they Googling you? They're looking for, who's saying bad things about you, who's saying good things about you. They're looking at your website. They're looking at your overall presence, and they're getting feedback on whether generally you're ethical and whether people like you and so forth, right? So
another mistake, Master Oliver, that a lot of members forget about, that is almost as important as the marketing, because you got to do the marketing, but then what happens is they don't keep stats. They don't keep how many leads, how many appointments, how many first, how many second, how many enrolled, how many renewed, how many dropped out. In other words, what are your stats? Are you on top of those stats? Because having those statistics, you can actually look. Those people that are doing marketing, they're not just arbitrarily throwing money out. What they're doing is tracking the statistics to see what their cost per lead, what their cost per appointment, per enrollment. All of that goes into play on how much more you can afford to invest in that marketing. So statistics is the key to growing your business. Even if you're doing the other systems, if you leave that part off, it's a guessing game. There's no strategy. There's no way to really analyze the efficiency of your business. And that's what you need when you're down. I have to analyze where the problems are to be able to correct the problems. So that right now is, for most people, they go, well, we just didn't have that many. Okay, then I say, how many? Oh, they say, well, we had about 100 the last 3 months. Don't tell me the last 3 months. Tell me each of those last 3 months, because if I did something in March and I didn't make any adjustment for April, then I'm stupid. I'm not applying the knowledge that I'm supposed to be learning. Because if it was wrong in March, where did I make the adjustments to see if I made the right adjustments in April? And if I didn't, then I have a chance to change them and then make May more productive. See, you've got to be working from your past successes or failures. When you look at the things that need to be addressed, the most important, and it could be the most important, was you didn't get enough leads. Well, I got enrollments, but I only got, 5 enrollments. Okay, well, how many leads did you have to get those 5 enrollments? Well, some people don't even know. Well, I don't know. I didn't have many. Well, we either have to double down on the marketing for the leads to get up so the enrollments go up, or maybe we need to get better at making the appointments from those leads, or maybe we need to get better at making a better show rate. But that's what the stats do.
Okay. Well, let me interrupt you, Master Smith, and let me summarize here for just a second. And I'm going to give you my take on things, which is my delusion, but I think it'll be a little bit more helpful than some people's take on it, and give you a couple of assignments. First of all, the assignments. Assignment number 1 is go back to the 2 checklists that we've put out. This was the first one, implementation during coronavirus, steps to thrive, and really go through and ask yourself, did I really do, and am I really doing all of these things? Did I implement an extra morning workout via Zoom? Did I do midday leadership lesson? That was Amanda Olson's idea. Am I doing my full class schedule simulcast? have I over communicated with my students everything that's going on when I'm in the process of shutting down and when I'm in the process of gradually reopening? Have I given them additional online resources? Did I give them a new textbook? Did I give them some home training aids, et cetera? So go through both of these checklists and really be serious for yourself. Did I do all this stuff? Am I doing all this stuff? Or am I pretending to make a shot at it? Number two, go through.
That was a great checklist. That was so important. I just want to reemphasize that, Master Oliver, that those things you said right there, I know there's nobody who did those things who lost 25% of their students.
No. Yeah, in every case, they're either plus or minus, same results as last year, or even up a little bit, right? So go through both checklists and be honest with yourself. Then go through that marketing checklist, and we certainly know there's not many big July 4th events that you can be at right now. We couldn't go do Black Widow at the AMC Theater because they were shut down in May. But other than that, are you getting 40 different things going right now, including saturating your prospects with direct mail, et cetera, right? So that's your assignment first, is go through both of those coronavirus specific checklists, the gradual reopening and a checklist for being, implementation during coronavirus, and go through the marketing checklist, right? Do way more marketing that seems reasonable and expect to spend more money than you think is reasonable. And also make sure that we're making each new student we enroll worth $7,000 or $8,000 to us over their lifetime value, right? So that's assignment number one. Go through those three checklists and really hold yourself accountable for, am I doing this? Assignment number two is every day do a mental catharsis. Every night before you go to sleep, do a mental catharsis. If you insist upon spending time on, and by the way, I'm a news junkie, so I'm got the news on the TV 24/7, and I'm looking at all the stuff. But what I know is all the TV news is incomplete, and all of the social media news is almost all BS on one end or the other, right? Mindy, it's like that one stupid article you sent me about economics. If you just read the headline and the picture, you would, you'd have to be Bill de Blasio to have written that damn article. You've got to, if you're paying attention, you've got to read it in depth. Deborah, I forget her name, but she had a great interview. I'm probably repeating myself, but she had a great interview, and they were asking her about news coverage during the coronavirus. And she said, well, truthfully, most of the articles, newspaper, magazine, one thing or another, if you read the entire article, they more or less get the story right and they get the right facts. The problem is the headline and the first couple paragraphs in the picture are almost always misleading. And most people only read the headline and look at the pictures, maybe the first paragraph, they don't read it in depth. So they'll put out a headline like, basically that article, Mindy, you gave me, was basically the rich are screwing the poor. But the reality was those people who are 25% top quartile of income, which is not rich by anybody's stretch of the imagination, that's not the yacht and the Bugatti crowd, were unable to spend discretionary income at the theater, at movies, at restaurants, personal trainers, the spa, and other health club activities. Why? Because they want to screw those people who are working there? No, because the government shut them down and they were unable to go spend the money. It also said that discretionary money, like somebody coming and cleaning the pool or mowing the lawn and so forth, was as strong as it's ever been, if not a little bit higher. Therefore, they were stacking up, money that they couldn't spend otherwise out in the market by staying home, eating at home, and so forth. Well, that's a whole different take than the headline and the picture of the Louis Vuitton store. And the communists who wrote the thing, just had a completely whacked out view of the world, right? But almost all news on social media is that one extreme or the other, and if you just read the headlines, it's completely inaccurate. So my takeaway is if you're going to interpret all this stuff subjectively anyway, interpret it in a way that empowers you to be richer, to have more students, and to do a better job for them. Don't interpret it in a way that leads you to believe that you're going to be destitute and that your students aren't interested and that you can't do a good job for your students, right? So any and everything that enters your purview, force yourself to filter it with, how does this help me have more students? How does this help me do better service? How does this help me keep them longer and keep them more engaged? That's the filter you want to run through everything. Because again, look at what we said about email, social media, everything else, massive improvements in results. You would have thought that nobody would respond to anything. And in fact, you know, schools like Amanda were just overwhelmed. We were doing coaching on how to do, you know, double the intro flow you've ever done before and do it virtually and have, you know, not lose people in the cracks. And a lot of people got lost in the cracks until, you know, Jan, until you got comfortable with it, till Amanda got comfortable, et cetera, right? So the next takeaway, and I'll wrap this up. While you're watching news and all this stuff, my takeaway is this. Underlying the economy was more solid than it's ever been in the lifetime of anybody on this meeting. As a political statement, Trump did everything right. And the economy was better for Hispanics, for women, for young people, for old people, for black people, for white people, for educated people, for uneducated people. It was better than it had ever been in history for every category. And then government, state, local, national, turned the switch and turned off a big chunk of it. Didn't turn off all of it, but they turned off the ability to walk into a health club. They turned off the ability to walk into a restaurant. They turned off the ability to walk into a bar. They turned off the ability to go to Broadway. They turned off the ability to go to a movie theater, et cetera, right? As soon as that dimmer switch comes back on, all those people who have money sitting in the bank that they would have spent in the last 5 months have it sitting there to spend. I don't hear anybody talking about that, but that's reality, right? Number two, this case is unusual. It's a black swan event. Hope to God we never have another one of this, right? But anytime there's an economic downturn, you can be assured that those people with less than a high school education are going to be hurt the worst, and those people with a college education plus are going to be hurt the least. Those people who are under 30 are going to be hurt the worst, and those people who are 45, middle-aged, are going to be hurt the least. Families, two-parent household, mom and dad with kids, are almost always going to be stable, and single mom, you know, kid out of wedlock, that's going to be hurt the most, right? So what does that mean you should do in your marketing always? Well, don't get hooked into and stuck on 18 to 28-year-old women cardio kickboxing, because they got decimated in this thing, especially if you didn't have a college educated, you know, if they were an attorney, college educated, except for maybe docs, but mostly they were fine, right? The under 30-year-old male crowd, especially the under 30-year-old male blue collar, they get wiped out every time. Doesn't matter whether it's black, white, Hispanic, but they get wiped out every time. The lower they are on the socioeconomic status, under 30, less than college educated, the more they get hammered. Okay? So on a regular basis, that's why I like the kids market. Mom and dad have college degrees. They have 2.3 kids. They live in a solid middle-class suburb. And if I was going to err on that case, I'll err towards Hispanic immigrant family, because they like their kids even more than, you know, third-generation Americans, and will spend more money. Okay? So what it means is, he's laughing, but it's absolutely documented. So what it means is, the takeaway is, determine your marketing, determine your student body, by where the economy is most stable and the people who are going to be most stable with your school. Don't try to be opportunistic and just say to yourself, well, everybody should be doing this, because that's the wrong approach. The next thing to do is to recognize, again, my take on it is the economy in July is going to be sailing. The economy in August is going to be better. The economy in September is going to be better. If you hate Trump, that's probably bad news for you. If you love Trump, that's probably good news for you. But the thing is, no matter what else happens, with little exception, is the dimmer switch opens, it closes, but there's huge pent-up demand. There's huge opportunity. And if you look at a lot of the major companies in the country, they're doing far better during the pandemic than anyone would have expected, right? Hell, they sold out of the first run of Corvettes, and Apple is thriving, and Google is thriving, and Amazon is thriving, and Walmart is thriving. You can go through the list. There is a niche, hospitality, and frankly, gyms and martial arts schools, but the only martial arts schools who are doing bad had two things that were wrong. Number one, they made bad decisions, and they immediately catastrophized and looked at the world in the wrong way. And two, they got really bad advice on what to do next. If you get good advice on what to do next, then, you know, I would argue that's us. But number two, more importantly, you think about the world right, and you look at it from a standpoint of where's my opportunity, not, oh my God, everything's imploding. Then you'll make things happen in the right way. Does that make sense? And again, kudos to Jan for being up in, June. But kudos to Tim for being level May over May. Well, I mean, that's like being up 40%, right? I mean, he had to do 40% more to be level. That's okay. If you have to do 40% more, do 40% more. Just pull your head out of your ass and don't catastrophize, and double down the marketing. You keep everything going. Any questions or thoughts? We're way over time as usual. Jan, thank you for, hey, Tim, you're actually here.
Yeah,
we were talking to your staff. Yes. I was laughing about you being pissed off about being down from your plan earlier today. But tell them about your results the last couple of months and what you've been doing to maintain it. I also told your staff that I took some pressure off their shoulders, and then I explained what I did. I said, well, I guess that didn't help you. But go ahead.
We immediately pivoted to online classes. We were fortunate to have that set up from a couple of years ago. And, followed a lot of the direction, of course, from Master Oliver, Grandmaster Smith, everybody. Communicated, we put out Facebook, daily challenges, daily mat chats. Communication-wise, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, and a lot of postcards. Staff did a wonderful job, adapting to the online classes. And what was it? It's been a month ago now. We were able to start doing outside classes. They adapted right to that. Now, we weren't able to simulcast them because of our latest class would have been in the dark. But so we had our outside classes going on, and then I had another set of instructors doing our inside classes.
You know how to solve the dark thing, right? You line the cars up and tell all the parents to put the headlights on. And then if you wanted to get really sophisticated, you get a bunch of those construction lights with those little generators, and run the generator with the...
If this happens again, I'll remember that.
Yeah. And, we've done the thing of the class at midnight with all the parents lined up with the headlights on, and told them to leave the engine off unless their battery started to drain, and then, crank it up and, idle it for a while.
And then I was just reviewing, as I was saying in an earlier meeting, I was reviewing half-year numbers because, yes, we are halfway through the year. And we're about 3% off of last year, which last year was also our best year that we've ever done.
Yep.
So,
And can I say, Tim, also the staff you have now was not your main staff you had last year. This was, they had been working for you part-time, but now they're the full-time guy. They're the head people, and the whole training you did to prepare them to take over, and obviously in not the best of circumstances and of the pandemic coming, but because obviously as just being the head guys for, I don't know, it hasn't been a year yet. It's quite an accomplishment on your part for training them, and then of course for them to rise to the occasion.
well, thank you, sir. But I think, it's a good team. And I guess I probably am pretty good at maybe giving direction, but they're good at making sure they follow through with it and then put their own spin on a couple of things. And, that's how we got to where we are. But yeah, I'm very grateful, very happy that we are where we are at. And yeah, just got to remember to feel good about it as opposed to being 17% down the budget. We're 3% down to last year.
If you remember when I was there, when the last time I was there, when they were relatively new and you were a little concerned, I told you then that you've got the right people in the right spot, that you're going to be surprised at the outcome. And sure enough, they proved us both right.
Well, and you know what, they have, and Miss Karras was still here. Matter of fact, she's sitting behind me now because you guys can see. She's
really
still
helped the transition and still helping. So
yeah, still a big part of what we have going on. And yes, the staff, we made some changes in instructing staff, and Kyle has stepped up wonderfully. And yeah, no, it's everything is good.
We're talking new program director and new head instructor.
Yes. Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier too, thanking you guys, you were on the phone when I thanked you, but listening to what you guys had to say kept our minds all together. And I think, as Master Oliver mentioned earlier, if people actually do what you guys say to do, things go okay. And, I guess over the years, I've been a little slow to react, but
yeah, I'll give you number 2 to Jan on the hard-headed award.
Okay, but I've proven over and over again, and I'll talk about it with the staff on how when we do what we're supposed to do, good things happen. And so yeah, if anybody's newer to this, if something sounds crazy to you, just put that out of your mind and do it. Okay, I won't take up any more time because.
Well, thank you, Tim. And by the way, there's no reason in the world that you can't be up 20% by the end of the year.
Right.
We know that you have renewals sitting there that should have been done, that haven't been done. We know that there's pent up demand for students. I also believe this is going to be our best summer ever because of this pent up demand, and people are just ready, to be out of house arrest. So there's huge opportunity there.
A lot of locations have a lot of students with no home right now too.
Yeah.
Master Oliver, I have a quick question if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
For the month of June, we spent about $600 on Google marketing, and we enrolled 6 people. I am thinking about adding more marketing budget for Google marketing. What's your expectation for July? Do you feel that we should add more budget on it?
Well, here's the first thing, just as a general principle. You spend $600 and you got 6 enrollments. If you're doing everything else right, and you're doing a lot of things right, Chris, they're worth $5,000 or $6,000 each.
Yeah.
So that tells you that I'm spending $100, I'm getting $500 or $600 up front when they enroll, right? What do? I double down, triple down, quadruple down until my marginal return is equal to my marginal revenue. I mean, that's the economist speaking. But I keep doubling down on that. And if I stay anywhere, if I double down and I got where it was I did 12 enrollments and it cost me $200 a piece, I'm great. If I did 18 enrollments and it cost me $300 a piece, I'm tickled as a pig in shit. If I spent doubled down again and it cost me $500 per enrollment, I'm just thrilled and I'm having a party. Okay. So anytime you're having that kind of results, there are some venues where doubling, tripling, quadrupling, all it does is keep you even, right? And what I don't know is what the click inventory is in your area and whether you can throw a lot more money at it without just increasing your cost per click. That's something Master Moody and Go to Karate could analyze for you really well. But in Facebook and in Google, well, in everything you do, but that's the principle in advertising. If it's working that well, you double down. And if it keeps working that well,
to know that that is working.
Right. But my rule of thumb for our members is I like to get you where you have a big down payment, to use that word. Let's say 400 plus 297, so that I can get you to spend up to that amount of money in marketing and not feel bad about it. The better way to do it would say they're worth $6,000, so I'll spend $1,500, $2,000 to get one, right? But yeah, Chris, you just keep throwing money at that until it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, at $100 per enrollment, that's a hell of a deal.
I noticed our click rate for June is 280 people clicked. In May, only about 140 people clicked. So it was already those. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, but it's your results you're looking at, and I think the thing that really should be pointed out there is you were hesitating about $100 per enrollment, and that's something that everybody should be thinking about. Is there should be no hesitation. At $100 per enrollment's great. We deal with a lot of people on the other side that I deal with where they're getting leads for $20 a lead or even $30 a lead or for now your conversion rate from lead to appointment to enrollment is, we want enrollments. That's where you actually make your money. So that's the one that you should measure. That's why Master Smith's always ranting at you guys about stats. But $20 a lead, unless you're blowing everything downstream, is cheap.
Even if you're blowing everything downstream, that means get your shit together.
Yeah, exactly. And so, this hesitation about that is crazy. There is a limit in AdWords in particular. There's only a certain limit you can go with click inventory, although you can play some games with that too, depending on and that's why when you kind of do it yourself with a lot of these things, you may not be optimizing your campaigns. That's why it's a pretty complicated thing for you to do yourself. That's why the other company does it for people. But
and to emphasize that, Master Moody, is, as you know, you were there. Matt Smith was there also. I got my start really coaching people on how to do internet marketing, and came to a conclusion 20 years later is they're better off to get Go to Karate or a comparable. They're better off to get Elite Digital or a comparable to do it, because it's constantly changing, it's complicated, and you need somebody constantly watching the numbers for you, interpreting and adjusting it, right? And in most cases, they're better off to have that outside person doing it rather than trying to do it themselves.
So that's a good point, because it is changing really, really. It's not just to have somebody managing it; it's to have somebody watching it. But it's changing really fast, and it's escalating in how fast these things are changing, and you just can't keep up with it.
Yeah, and it's changing really fast in part because of the political environment. The environment that they're operating in is changing constantly too. Yeah. For the worse, by the way. Politicians on both sides are going to kill the golden goose sooner or later.
Master Oliver, I got on the call a few minutes later. I don't know if you had a chance to answer the question I posted. I know you commented on it underneath.
Go ahead and ask it.
So I'm just trying to figure out the proper structure for a smaller school. And does it make sense to rotate some key staff? So that was, I guess, my main question. Does it make sense to rotate the main instructors so students don't get used to them at one particular location? Because
Okay, now I remember the question. Yeah, so you're talking about multiples, and so let's put it in context of multiple locations, right?
yes, sir.
My structure for multiples was always full-time program director, full-time instructor. Sometimes one or the other was designated branch manager. I tried to have that, meaning the more senior, the more accomplished. And the rule to be a branch manager is they had to be fully competent on every role in the school, by the way, right? But the payroll system for that was 25% of the gross for payroll. 12% branch manager, 10% for the other full-timer, and that leaves 3% for everything else, right? So in other words, I was always really lean on part-timers. That structure, I would layer on another full-timer more or less at 300 active, right? So if I had a school that was at 500 active, they were going to have 3 full-timers. They were going to have a branch manager and usually 2 full-time instructors, right? But one of those instructors is probably doing an awful lot of renewal prep, intros, helping the program director, all of them responsible for being involved in marketing. That payroll structure was 10%, 7%, 7%, and it barely leaves anything over for part-time, but it also illustrates why as the active count goes up, it's harder and harder and harder to keep the payroll down, right? As a percentage, right? So the bigger schools might be 27, 28%, which I was always pissed off about, but it was difficult to keep it there, right? So that's part of your question. The other part of the question is about rotating. And all student retention is based on, honestly, only 2 factors. It's based on goals, and it's based on relationship, i.e. rapport, okay? Putting systems in place to disrupt relationship and disrupt rapport are counterproductive, okay? Now, I did things like that. For a while, I had every Friday, all the staff rotated. So not the program directors, but the instructors. And I did that so they could go look at what was happening in different schools, give people each other feedback so the students would have something interesting to do. I have a friend who does what we do with attorneys, and he's got this wacky system where every time the attorney has an instructor, it's a different person because he doesn't want them to build a relationship. I think that's exactly the wrong way to do it, okay? Now, will you occasionally have the issue of the guy leaves and they all loved him or her, right? Yes. Will you occasionally have somebody who's unethical who tries to go across the street? Yes. There's ways to deal with all of that, right? The short answer to dealing with that is, number one, the first conversation you have is, I'm happy to welcome you to the team. I want us to be on a couple of ground rules, right? One, we have the non-compete, we have the non-solicitation agreement. 2 is, I want you to love everybody like they're your own kids, but you realize they're my students, they're not your students, right? So that level of ownership you have with them, I did all of the effort to put a roof over their head, to get them in the door, to pay all the bills, to train you, to create this. What I want you to know is, I want your career to have an upward trajectory. Option 1 is you go from instructor to program director to branch manager. Maybe that leads to general manager. Option number 2 is you use this as a great launching pad for a career in a different industry. Option 3 is you want to do a school that's your school, and we can do that as a joint venture. We can do that as something else structure we can do together, license, franchise. We can do that in that you just go do your own thing and I pat you on the back. Regardless of that, I will do everything I can to help you train, get ready, and let you know if you're ready for that or not. With one exception, is we're making a deal right now, you're never going to stick a knife in my back, right? What I mean by that is, you're not going to try to leave with any of the student body, and you're not going to do a school that's closer to 3, 5, 7 miles, right? Our non-compete was always 7 miles, which is kind of the furthest distance we could argue that we could do legally and enforce, right? And by the way, some places you can't enforce them no matter what. You still have the conversation, you still do it, right? But what you want to do is then on a regular basis is what's your next step in your career? Because you want to ferret out the guy's thinking, well, this guy's an idiot and I'm making him all the money. Why don't I go across the street? Because eventually that's the way they think. They don't know that there's accounting, there's taxes, there's marketing, there's management, there's lease negotiation. They don't know all that, which is why 90% of the time they fail within 6 months, right? They don't know all that. So you want to ferret that out. And then when they say, well, I'd like to have my own school, I say, okay, great. Here's the range of stuff you have to know. Here's all the stuff I knew or I should have known before I opened the school, right? I'm happy to train you on all of it. Let's put together a timeline and start working on that, right? Now let's think about what you want to do. Do you want it to be something we do together? And by the way, if the guy or gal is an idiot and you're getting ready to fire them, don't do something as a partnership, right? That's not even on the table. But do you want to do something together? Do you want to go completely out on your own? Do you want to stay under the umbrella? Do you want it to be part of the same organization, testing and rank? Do you want to just go create your own? What do you want to do, right? Having those conversations keeps from them stabbing you in the back 99.5% of the time. There's always going to be somebody who's unethical, right? But that keeps that from happening. And then when you sincerely, I've helped a bunch of our guys go, hell, I even flew to Chicago and helped my ex-wife and her 2 new employees open a school in Chicago and did everything for it in one thing or another. As long as you ethically truly help them, get to the training wheels and teach them in one thing or another, they go out and they're happy and they don't, speak ill of you. And maybe it's a business opportunity. Maybe it's not, either way, I don't particularly care. But the other thing it does is it probably doubles or triples the longevity they have with you before they get antsy. Because anytime they think that you're putting the head on their shoulder and trying to keep them in place, that's when they rebel and react. As long as they're constantly learning and growing and you're offering to help them in any way they can. And that doesn't mean some of them don't leave in a huff. But I got to tell you, in 38 years, and there's a ton of schools in the Denver metro area that are people who used to be black belts or staff of mine. I've only had one person try to stab me in the back. That's an unbelievable record. June Rhee had one or two a year, frankly. But that's because they perceived in a lot of cases there wasn't that ramp to help them smoothly, right? Is that a fair statement, Master Smith?
Master Oliver, could I add 2 things to what you're saying?
Yep.
Just really quick. And I know we're totally out of time. Just really quick.
Oh, no, we're already 29 minutes over our schedule.
Well, one thing
relevant at this point. Might as well go for the next 3 days.
Well, one thing I would add is that is you still need to have a presence. So even when I had 8 schools, I still had a presence with the students. So there was a relationship I had, even though I didn't teach it. After 3 schools, I didn't teach daily anywhere. I taught like quarterly, but there's still a presence with me and the students. There's still a connection with me and the students. That's a little bit. But then the other thing that I thought was even more important was we have class planners that they follow. So the curriculum and what we teach and how we teach is all based on, they all teach exactly the same thing. So if you teach or the other guy teaches or the other guy teaches, the other guy teaches, it's all the same stuff. It's all the same plan. It's all the same thing. So the quality of the instruction and what they do, the instruction and curriculum is identical. So if an instructor leaves and he wants to bring people with them, or if there's any kind of this kind of shenanigans, it mitigates a lot of that. Number one, the relationship, the big guy is you. And number two, the quality of the instruction is going to be the same. And the thing I worry about is much less the guy going across the street. The thing I want to make sure I can do is I can move people around and switch them around, or if somebody's sick or something happens or somebody's on vacation, all this stuff can happen. And it I still want them to have good relationships, not like that lawyer example that we talked about. But if somebody else replaces somebody because of whatever reason, maybe they went to college or they changed jobs or whatever, I don't have any transition issues because the quality of the instruction is going to be the same because they have constant class planners. They know exactly what to teach. It doesn't matter if it's a 5th degree black belt teaching or a 3rd degree black belt teaching or if it's me teaching. It's going to be the same class quality. Now, if I teach, it's going to be a better class, I think, maybe not, but it doesn't make any difference. I can always make the statement that our quality is exactly the same. They're all trained by me. It's all, consistent. So in terms of product, it's the same product. So that's what I want to add.
But you need, you need that rapport built up.
Yeah. Well, and again, MJ, full disclosure, we could have that conversation for 3 days, right? On developing loyalty with the staff, developing loyalty with a student, creating the right perspective. I'll just add one thing as a pure business issue. If everybody's renewed the leadership and they're committed for 4 years, even if somebody does take somebody, usually they take the ones that are paid in full for life anyway. Why do I?
Yeah.
I had one that they didn't open across the street, but then, they started soliciting people and everybody they took were paid in full to leadership. I was like, okay, one of them had the temerity to come back and wanted a refund so they could pay them. It's like, no. William Wong isn't still here.
Yeah, there he is.
He is.
That's that bottom.
There you are. There you are. Your screen changed. You had a couple of questions as long as we're long here. And,
lasting through the time.
Yeah. But I just got a text from Bob. You had a couple of questions, one about publicity and one about location, right?
Yes, correct. So on Saturday morning, I have a news station coming over Saturday morning. It's Good Day Sacramento. And they're going to be coming in, and I get about 3 minutes or so with them to have them show our studio and also check out our protocols with reopening after the whole COVID thing. So that's the first thing.
Great opportunity.
Is that TV or radio?
That's TV.
Oh, wonderful.
Awesome.
News station.
Yeah, good. One thing that I would do is I would type up a little sheet of paper that gives, make it concise, but a free offer with the phone number. And when they walk in, who's ever in charge, the producer, say, would you mind doing a scroll on the screen with this? Because one of the things we want to do in this COVID world is provide a wonderful opportunity, virtual and with social distancing as we can do that for everybody in Sacramento. Would you mind doing that? Anytime I've done that, 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 times they do it. So you end up on a scroll on the screen of, so-and-so is offering 2 free weeks for everybody in the area, and we'll throw in a $50 uniform and just give them a call. I have been shocked at how promotional they'll let me get.
Okay.
And even the ones that won't post it on the screen the whole time will say it at the end.
Right.
A lot of times, yeah. A lot of times, even if they're doing a remote, the caster, newscaster at the station will come back and say they've been so generous. They're going to provide a couple of free weeks, and they'll come on.
Right.
I mean, look, they're in the business of selling commercial time to businesses who need to sell stuff. So they are far more willing, especially at a local level, to cooperate and stuff like that than you give them credit for, right? So that's one thing, right? The other thing is just like an intro, be aware of the visuals and have it look and be exciting, but lace it with confidence, focus, discipline. A great thing to do during the shutdowns and all the multiple ways why it's going to be completely safe, and the 3-prong approach of in the park, on video, and in person with social distancing.
And why it's going to be so good for the kids. That that people need this exercise during this coronavirus. They need the mental release. They need, and it gives them a chance to develop some self-defense at the same time. And we even, because of the the news stuff that's all out there, you say it's even more important nowadays to get that, you know, with as crazy as some of these cities are getting, it's really important for people to have
I would not go there.
sense and confidence.
I would not go there. I would stick to Corona. I wouldn't go towards.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing is have the offer written out to hand to the producer, because a number of the television stations will post your interview and video on their website, and then they'll add that offer with a clickable link at the end of the news story. And
that's true.
They'll say when they do that. So if you have that written out with the website and the link, hand that to the producer, it's more likely to make it on their website.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then get the clip and use it everywhere, right? And by the way, there's companies that record everything, and for a minor fee, they'll send you the broadcast quality clip of it. The station usually won't, but there are third-party companies that'll do that for you, right? But then use it everywhere. Put it on YouTube, put it on your website, put it on your Facebook page, but then send it on a DVD with a press release to all of the other stations in town. Because here's the secret about newscasters: they're mostly stupid, and they report what everybody else is reporting, right? They're mostly, I mean, I'm over exaggerating, but they're mostly not very bright, and they're mostly not,
and some will want to come out and do another one with you and get their own take on it.
Right.
But what you do is you take the clip and you send the press release out to all of the other stations, because once somebody covered you, you're worth covering. That's in their mind. Well, they covered it, I should cover it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's a way to use that as well.
Another thing I would do is have some coffee, some pastry, something at your studio to share with the producer and the crew. You have the cameraman, the producer, whoever they've got coming. If you've got that little extra that shows you've thought of them, that's going to be something that they're going to remember you. They're going to come back to you for other things. And it's a really good way to have a reporter go, hey, here's my cell phone number. If you have anything else come up, it's a really good way to make that personal and start building a relationship with a reporter.
See, what you want to do is you want to become their go-to person on any relevant story. And part of it, to leapfrog off what Mindy said, which is absolutely right and brilliant, is, if you kind of give them a little checklist on things that you're an expert on, right?
Right.
Then in their mind, the bully story comes up, you're the person in their Rolodex because they know and like you. Whatever other story it is, that comes up and you're in their Rolodex to call first. And by the way, that's what, June Rhee, once he had momentum, they were calling him for all kinds of stuff because he was in their Rolodex. Our friend Bernie Carrick, I mean, for God's sake, right now, Jeff, he's on like every hour and a half.
Yeah, he was on last night again.
Yeah, every time I turn on the news, it seems like he's on there right now. With NYPD, with riots, with policing, the Floyd thing, with the Georgia thing. I mean, but what they have is they have him in his Rolodex, and they have him, and they have Kelly and one or two other former commissioners or former cops who are on their short list, and they say, which one can we get? And they, he's on all the time. And that's national, but, in local, it's just as easy for you to be their go-to expert, on those particular things. Does that make sense? You had another quick question. We don't have to keep everybody, but you're welcome to stay.
No,
question on location, right?
Yeah, so we're going to be moving from our location. It's not the greatest location. The floor plan's not the greatest, and they're selling the building. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay, so there's some uncertainty. So I'm looking at locations. Actually, I'm going to go meet the commercial broker right now. That's why I'm in the car.
Okay.
But I want to say, okay, what type of location should I be looking for? What's ideal? Is it paying more money to be a marketing type of location, or is it kind of just get bigger space so I can have more students in there to increase the revenue in that way? So I'm just looking for some guidance on what type of location I should be looking for ideally.
Let me give you a medium length answer. Okay. How many square foot do you have now?
It's it's 3,600 feet, but very not usable very well. So my mat space is only about 1,500 square feet.
How many active students do you have now?
I currently have 110,
Okay.
about 110.
Okay. 2,100 square feet utilized well is good for a capacity of about 300. I've run 650 and 2,400 square feet. I never would recommend that it was a zoo. Okay. But 2,100 or 2,400 square feet is good for around 300 active without becoming a total zoo. Okay.
Okay.
Rule of thumb, 7 square foot per student, right? So you don't need to have more square footage. Now,
right.
From the advertising marketing standpoint, the first thing is going to be you don't want to move so far that your existing student body, doesn't come with you, right? But within that,
right, everything's within 4 or 5 minutes so far.
Okay, good. The most important thing is the demographics immediately around the place, right? I can move 5 minutes and move into like the slums, and people who live on the golf course don't want to drive into the slums to do something, right? So I've got to make sure the demographics immediately around is what I would want to draw from, but it's also an area that more upscale people in the area are comfortable going to, right?
Right.
So that's number one criteria. Then number two criteria is first impression and presentable, right? So I could be in the best demographics ever, and I'm next to a strip joint on one side, a liquor store on the other, and I'm, in the back behind the shopping center they have to drive into, right? I don't want that.
That's kind of what I have now.
A solid anchor. If you're going to get a strip center, have a good, the biggest anchor that's in there, the more valuable it's going to be.
Well, now you're going into like 3, 4, 5, right? Now you're getting into like A space, C space, and you want to juggle and look at street visibility, traffic flow, and the amount of foot traffic in the shopping center, right? So I could be in a shopping center anchored by, well, what's your highest end grocery store chain up there?
So around here, probably Target is the biggest one, and that's probably about $3 a square foot. And then,
well, like, let's take Florida. Publix is the better shopping, grocery store, right? So you could be in the high, the better quality, big anchor, but you're in a place where you get no foot traffic or visibility from that anchor. That really doesn't do you much good other than create traffic flow problems. On the other hand, if I was next to the high end or next to the Target, Super Target, let's say,
right,
but I'm in a place that's like Greg Macy's first school was Super Target, great neighborhoods right next door. Now, I am allergic to high rents. That's the best way to say it. Okay.
Yep.
If I have my choice between it's the perfect location, lots of foot traffic, everything else, and it's going to be $12,000 a month.
Yep.
And beautiful demographics, presentable space, good visibility, not perfect, less foot traffic, maybe not much foot traffic, but it's going to be $6,000 a month. I almost always go for $6,000. Okay.
Got it.
In part because we have so much marketing opportunity and venues that extra $6,000 a month can probably be spent more productively than the foot traffic. Okay.
Right.
Now, again, I mentioned Greg Macy, and he and I have this argument back and forth all the time. And he's done a brilliant job at being in 2 of the 3 of the best shopping centers I've ever seen for a martial arts school. One of the three, he was ahead of the curve and is too big, and there's some other things going on. But two of the three, wouldn't you agree, Master Smith?
Yeah.
That one with the big courtyard out front and the Regal Cinema and everything, and the other one next to Target. Two of the three best shopping centers I've ever seen.
Yep.
And I'm always telling him, God, that's a beautiful school. Great. That's a great shopping center. God, I wish you had half the square footage and half the rent.
Yeah.
You know,
the last one he did is the one that I was least impressed with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just make sure also, remember, this is a renter's market right now. You know, there's a lot of people going out of business. So make sure you don't, don't offer anything. Let him see what he's offering, and then we can always negotiate from there and give you some suggestions on that. So don't make any suggestions about what you're willing to pay for rent or how much free rent or how much build out. Just find out what he's going to offer, and then we can always come back and make. I always like to get a couple places bidding against each other.
Yeah. Well, William, what are you paying now?
Oh, it's dirt cheap. It's only 66 cents a square foot for 3,600 square feet in a crummy area. Everything you talked about, kind of being in the worst, the slums, kind of worst part of the area of the city. I just got my my gas line chopped a couple days ago for gas. So
66 cents a foot per month. So annual.
At 2,300 about?
Yep, about 2,300 a month right now. Everything else that I'm looking at is between what, 3 to 7, anywhere 3 to 7,000.
That doesn't surprise me. Our Thornton School, I believe their rent is about $5,500. Our Westminster School, CAM, everything is $4,400. Now with that one, by the way, we relocated from a space that was $4,600 a month to a space that's now 6 years into the deal, $4,400. But I negotiated that one where the first year was free. Now, again, this could be a 3-day topic, but the thing to do is it's a balance between the space is ready to go, or there's going to have to be a lot of tenant improvements. If I can find a space that's pretty close, ready to go, I'm much more likely to get the landlord where I can say, I'll do all the tenant improvements, but what I need is rent abatement, especially in this current environment. And that's the way I negotiated a year free. And basically, they got cold feet in the deal. So it ended up being the first month as they wanted 10,000 down. I gave them the first month. But then I did 3 months free, pay a month, 3 months free, pay a month, 3 months free, pay a month, 3 months free, pay a month. And we could go through the thing. Master Smith and Master Moody and I have all pulled off a variety of deals like that in some interesting ways. But you're in all likelihood going to get nowhere near what you're currently paying.
Right.
But what I'd rather have is 2,400, keeping it under 4,000 or 5,000 a month.
Yes.
And then getting a lot of rent abatement to give you runway.
Because you're going to need about 200 students. That's going to be your sweet spot. And you need a little time to develop that. So that's why you need some rent abatement.
Yeah, we want to keep the rent at 10 to 15% of the gross, no more. Right?
Okay. So
if you have a $5,000 a month rent, your kind of minimum threshold is in the low 30s. And if you're in the 50s or 60s, you're great, and more, you're even better, right?
Right.
But we don't want to be where all the profits are going to the landlord. That's, there's no reason to work practically for free.
Yes. Absolutely.
William, post or send it to us every step of the way, everything you find. The last thing I'm going to leave you to, since we're only 50 minutes over our timeline, is the last thing I'm going to leave you with is it's a good time to go knock on doors. And what I mean by that is leave the commercial realtor aside and just find the shopping centers you'd like and go in and walk into every door and talk to the owners, especially the ones that look like that'd be an easy transition. Shoe store, something just big, open and empty, martial arts schools.
Carpet store.
Yep.
But mattress place, these places go in and out of business quite a bit, and they're big open spaces, so they're easy to transition. And you can by the way, almost immediately with just minor modifications, and then you can do some other additions later.
Yeah, but what happens by knocking on doors is a lot of these guys and gals they're stressed out to the max right now, right? So if you're willing to walk in and relieve them of a $250,000 lease, that they're picturing is I lose my house, I lose my life savings, and I'm out in the streets starting over, because that's the emotional, place they get to, right?
Right.
My employees never get it, right? They're going to go look for another job, and the owner's losing the house, and got the IRS coming after them and everything else. If they're on the brink, and you can walk in, and by the way, they could be 6 months behind in the lease, and you can go in and renegotiate that with the landlord.
Right.
Let me explain. Bill here is 3 weeks from throwing in the towel. What I want to do is come in and take it over from him, but we're going to have to waive the past rent and do some rent abatement, and then I'm happy to do a new 5 or a new 10-year deal with you. You can do a lot of that kind of stuff right now.
Okay.
But I would go do that on your own. And by the way, don't discount buying something. Go look.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Well, go look at buildings that would be a good fit. And like Chris Hearn can do the SBA financing on that stuff very easily on real estate as well. I mean, that's the easiest thing to get done.
Right.
So, don't discount that. And if you're worried about credit or something like that, well, you'll get an awful lot of owner carry. Let's say there's a freestanding building that's 4,000 square feet. That's a mattress store, to use Master Smith's example. And the owner is stressed out and freaked out and one thing or another. I mean, I could go in and do an owner carry, and it's basically a lease purchase. And I don't have to go through the banks, or I could go refinance it maybe at a lower rate, sometime.
Right.
Sometimes the mortgage on it, that payment is less than what a lease would be.
Right.
And those are pretty popular right now.
Okay. Yeah, I looked around. There's just not a whole lot out here, and it's kind of pricey. The building that I'm in right now is obviously for sale. They had a first right of refusal, but just what it would take to renovate it was quite a bit. It was a little overpriced.
Knock on doors. You're going to find a bunch of people who are stressed out about their house getting repossessed and their.
Where is your school now? Where's your school?
It's in a downtown area in Lincoln, California, suburbs of Sacramento.
Yeah.
Okay, Sacramento.
Yeah. Not knock on a bunch of doors while you're at it.
Okay.
Yeah. When you're talking to landlords, by the way, they're going to give you, well, you see that business over there, don't go talk to him. But, they're going to have a lot of them that are 4 or 5 months behind in the rent that they would be fine to evict out as well.
Yeah,
but if you work.
And I asked the realtor that when he's showing you the center, say, well, are there any tenants in here that are about ready to go out?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And they'll tell you right off, because they'll say, well, this guy's behind. So, because that'll give you some more options on spaces in there, and sometimes a better deal.
Yeah. Three of my first 5 locations were that. It's back in the Jane Fonda era, and every housewife was doing a women's fitness center. And I literally, Sandy's Way to Fitness was the first one. I walked in and introduced myself to Sandy, and they evicted her the next day. And I walked in and they gave me the keys. I mean, there was 2 of them were women's fitness centers, and I forget I think the third was a shoe store or something like that. But yeah, just start knocking on doors, because you'll find things that you can buy, and you'll find things that you can just walk in and renegotiate the lease or sublet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the advice.
Yeah, but keep us appraised all the way along the deal, And don't commit to anything without we beat them up a lot.
Yep, I will post it. And then also just wanted to, just say, since it's way over time already, I'm already late for my meeting here. But just a little bit that I've learned from you guys being on the calls and doing the quick start meeting has been invaluable. I mean, my mindset has totally shifted. In the last 2.5 weeks, I've had 9 signups at a much higher price. And I have 8 more that I didn't convert to an enrollment yet, but it's almost ready. So I know I got to work on my sales process. So there's a lot I need to work on, but my price went way up and I'm confident about it. And they're signing up, like no questions asked. It's okay. So thank you for all the guidance. And I know I have a lot more to learn.
Oh, and thanks for that great testimonial. We're going to use that everywhere we can put it, by the way.
And you see Steven's still on here. He's another one that's been kind of running with it. The stuff we've been saying, he's been making big gains too.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to kick you guys all out. I'm going to keep Mindy bobbing. Yeah.
A quick question on square footage. What is the mat square foot? You're talking 2,100 square foot unit. Is that the mat space or the overall? Like we've got 2,200 square foot, but our mat is only 1,200 of it.
The way the landlords compute it is the intermediate point between your drywall and the guy next door's drywall.
I think they were talking square square foot per person.
No. I think it's laid out okay or
if
not.
we have a big enough mat for our students.
Well, post the floor plan.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I will.
You know what I have to have is preferably 2 places where I can have a one-on-one conversation. One of them could be an intro room if I had my best choice, right?
That now. Yep.
Yeah. And I need to have a couple of restrooms, and I hate dressing rooms, showers, lockers, all that stuff. I would never have it again, truth be told. Too many problems, right? And then if I can have a small little reception area, then I'm fine, right? And I don't want much, no pro shop, and the viewing area is the benches along the wall where kicks are grazing mom's nose if she's got her head buried in the book.
That's what we have too much of. We got a cafe area that's too big, but it's kind of where we're.
Yeah, you don't need that at all.
We'll have to move from here though.
The cafe area is a perfect intro room.
Put the layout, but also do a walkthrough video of the front of your school and what the parking lot looks like and the other vendors, and then into your school.
I'm at the limit for myself being able to be articulate. So go away and post feedback on that. But yeah, get rid of the cafe, pro shop, all that stuff goes away, and any kind of elaborate spectator area goes away.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
But the
everybody off.
Cafe, make it a big intro room.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good luck, William.
All right,
Okay,
thank you. See you later. Have a good holiday weekend.
Yeah, good luck on the negotiations.
I'll let you guys know. You'll be a part of it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Every step of the way. So we've done every deal you can possibly imagine in good markets and bad markets. So keep us every step of the way.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right.
Bye.
And thanks for the compliment. You're quite welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Oliver.
We hit Mindy and Jeff's limit to their bladder.
I had to sneak out a little earlier.
Hey,
Jeff was talking. I knew he would get to keep going.
Oh, wait a second. We just recorded that.